Welcome to He Changed the World from Forest Baptist Church, a series of talks about Jesus Christ from Mark's Gospel, recorded by me, David Last. Talk number 19. He's not dead. Mark chapter 6, verse 14 through to verse 29. Every so often, a new political diary is published to spill the beans on the lives of the powerful. What really went on behind closed doors? And if it's not politics, then it's the royals. An expose with exclusive photos of misbehaviour among the UK's leading family. And when diaries and gossips are unavailable, well, then television and film steps in to turn the lives of leaders into drama or into soap operas. But however they come, stories of the rich and famous are always popular, especially when they're lurid. Well, here we have one from the Bible. It arises because Jesus' fame is spreading such that he gets a mention in the corridors of power, up at the king's palace. But, as you'd expect, the tales are distorted by rumour, by speculation. And so, like present-day urban myths that claim certain famous people really aren't dead, but live on elsewhere, similar is being said of Jesus. Some insist he's really John, a relative of Jesus, who's also been the topic of gossips. And that, for the local ruler, Herod Antipas, is a terrifying thought. Why? Because Herod struggled to cope with John when he was alive, and then, through vanity, he had him murdered. If John is still alive, then something bad must be on the way. We're strange when it comes to death, aren't we? We tell ourselves that it's completely normal and natural. Everybody gets recycled. And human beings have lived alongside death for so long that we should take it for granted. Yet it nags at us. Our own deaths worry us. The deaths of others whom we love fill us with grief. And then there's the thought of what death actually is. Is it really the end? We don't accept that easily, do we? It's seen in our tales of ghosts and our interest in near-death experiences. Sure, we may know that most of that is just superstitious nonsense, but it still plays on the mind. Herod is like that. Herod is troubled. Now, let's be clear. John isn't returning to haunt him. John really was murdered, and his body right at this moment is lying in a grave provided by his friends. But Herod still deserves to be worried. Why? Because of his conscience. He really ought to be nagged night and day about John's corpse. You see, the problem all started with Herod's wife. She was called Herodias. Previously married to Herod's brother, she dropped him in order to take up with Herod. John, a public commentator, criticised their behaviour, questioned their morals, and pointed out that they had broken the laws of the land in what they'd done. Well, like many do, Herodias reacted badly to that sort of criticism. She would have no one challenge her sexual conduct. She could do as she liked, no matter who it hurt or what damage it did or what shame she felt. So she hated John bitterly, and she nagged Herod to get rid of him. As a result, John ended up in prison. It's a dangerous road which Herodias took. When we will not allow others to criticise us, it can lead us down very dark paths. After all, If the person criticising us is wrong, then we can simply point that out. If they're right, then we have the chance to change, which is what John wanted for the king and queen. But when we won't listen to criticism, well then, that doesn't lead to good places. It can take us down into anger, resentment, and a grudge we can't let go of. How dare she say that to me? How dare he raise those questions? Our vanity and pride take hold, make us viciously defensive, ready to lash out cruelly and hurt anyone in our way. It did in Herod's palace. Initially, Herod protected John there in the prison. And that was because John's words, as much as Herod wanted to ignore them, struck a chord with him. He knew he ought to listen. Of course, his wife shrieked in his ear not to, but Herod held firm and kept John around until his birthday party. Almost certainly filled up with drink, Herod took such deep delight in a dance by Herodias' daughter that he said she could name her own reward. That was her mother's chance. Decapitate John. Herod was too weak to back down, do the right thing, and so John's head was served to Herodias on a dish. What do you think? Why is such a cruel tale included in the story of Jesus? It's not just gossip. It's to provide a contrast. Jesus is like the inverse of Herod. Strong where Herod is weak. Just where Herod is unjust. Principled where Herod is self-serving. Merciful where Herod is merciless. Kind where Herod is cruel. Loving where Herod is hateful. The contrast is here to say to us all, you have the rulers you deserve, but wouldn't you prefer one that you don't deserve? Because God has sent a finer king, the finest king. That's Jesus. If you will entrust your life to him, you will find yourself under the greatest of care, led by the wisest of all. The wisest person you will ever meet. Thanks for watching. Now, the passage in John's Gospel is going to be read out, so do stay on for that. Then give yourself a moment just to think, and maybe even to pray. I hope you'll also, I hope you'll also come back next time for the next talk in the series.
Mark chapter 6, verses 14 to 29. King Herod heard about this, for Jesus' name had become well known. Some were saying, John the Baptist has been raised from the dead, and that is why miraculous powers are at work in him. Others said, he is Elijah, and still others claimed, he is a prophet, like one of the prophets of long ago. But when Herod heard this, he said, John, the man I beheaded, has been raised from the dead. For Herod himself had given orders to have John arrested, and he had him bound and put in prison. He did this because of Herodias, his brother Philip's wife, whom he had married. For John had been saying to Herod, it is not lawful for you to have your brother's wife. So Herodias nursed a grudge against John and wanted to kill him. But she was not able to, because Herod feared John and protected him, knowing him to be a righteous and holy man. When Herod heard John, he was greatly puzzled, yet he liked to listen to him. Finally, the opportune time came. On his birthday, Herod gave a banquet for his high officials and military commanders and the leading men of Galilee. When the daughter of Herodias came in and danced, she pleased Herod and his dinner guests. The king said to the girl, ask me for anything you want and I'll give it to you. And he promised her with an oath, whatever you ask I will give you, up to half my kingdom. She went out and said to her mother, what shall I ask for? The head of John the Baptist, she answered. At once the girl hurried in to the king with the request, I want you to give me right now the head of John the Baptist on a platter. The king was greatly distressed, but because of his oaths and his dinner guests, he did not want to refuse her. So he immediately sent an executioner with orders to bring John's head. The man went, beheaded John in the prison, and brought back his head on a platter. He presented it to the girl, and she gave it to her mother. On hearing this, John's disciples came and took his body and laid it in a tomb.